Chapter 9 of The Circular Staircase. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ian Skillen. The Circular Staircase by Mary Roberts Rinehart. Chapter 9. Just Like a Girl. "Aunt Ray," Halsey said from the gloom behind the lamps, "what in the world are you doing here?" "Taking a walk," I said, trying to be composed. I don't think the answer struck either of us as being ridiculous at the time. "Oh, Halsey, where have you been?" "Let me take you up to the house." He was in the road and had Beulah and the basket out of my arms in a moment. I could see the car plainly now, and Warner was at the wheel. Warner, in an ulster and a pair of slippers over heaven knows what. Jack Bailey wasn't there. I got in, and we went slowly painfully up to the house. We didn't talk. What we had to say was too important to commence there, and besides it took all kinds of coaxing from both men to get the dragonfly up the last grade. Only when we had closed the front door and stood facing each other in the hall did Halsey say anything. He slipped his strong young arm round my shoulders and turned me so I faced the light. "Poor Aunt Ray," he said gently, and I nearly wept again. I must see Gertrude too. We'll have a three-cornered talk." And then Gertrude herself came down the stairs. She had not been to bed, evidently. She still wore the white negligee she had worn earlier in the evening, and she limped somewhat. During her slow progress down the stairs, I had time to notice one thing. Mr. Jimison had said that the woman who had escaped from the cellar had worn no shoe on her right foot. Gertrude's right ankle was the one she had sprained. The meeting between brother and sister was tense, but without tears. Halsey kissed her tenderly, and I noticed evidences of strain and anxiety in both young faces. "Is everything right?" she asked. "Right as can be," with forced cheerfulness. I lighted the living room and we went in there. Only a half-hour before, I had sat with Mr. Jimison in that very room, listening while he overtly accused both Gertrude and Halsey of at least a knowledge of the death of Arnold Armstrong. Now Halsey was here to speak for himself. I should learn everything that had puzzled me. "I saw it in the paper tonight for the first time," he was saying. "It knocked me dumb. When I think of this household of women, and a thing like that occurring—" Gertrude's face was still set and white. "That isn't all, Halsey," she said. "You and Jack left almost at the time it happened. The detective here thinks that that we know something about it." "The devil he does!" Halsey's eyes were fairly starting from his head. "I beg your pardon, Aunt Ray, but the fellow's a lunatic." "Tell me everything, won't you, Halsey?" I begged. "Tell me where you went that night, or rather morning, and why you went as you did. This has been a terrible 48 hours for all of us." He stood staring at me, and I could see the horror of the situation dawning in his face. "I can't tell you where I went, Aunt Ray," he said, after a moment. "As to why, you'll learn that soon enough. But Gertrude knows that Jack and I left this house before this horrible murder occurred." "Mr. Jimison doesn't believe me," Gertrude said drearily. "Halsey, if the worst comes, if they should arrest you, you must tell." "I shall tell nothing," he said, with a new sternness in his voice. "Aunt Ray, it was necessary for Jack and me to leave that night. I cannot tell you why just yet. As to where we went, if I have to depend on that as an alibi, I shall not tell. The whole thing's an absurdity, a trumped-up charge that cannot possibly be serious." "Has Mr. Bailey gone back to the city?" I demanded. "Or to the club?" "Neither," defiantly. "At the present moment I do not know where he is." "Halsey," I asked gravely, leaning forward, Have you the slightest suspicion who killed Arnold Armstrong? The police think he was admitted from within, and that he was shot down from above by someone on the circular staircase. I know nothing of it, he maintained, but I fancied I caught a sudden glance at Gertrude, a flash of something that died as it came. As quietly, as calmly as I could, I went over the whole story, from the night Liddy and I had been alone up to the strange experience of Rosie and her pursuer. The basket still stood on the table, a mute witness to this last mystifying occurrence. "There is something else," I said hesitantly, at the last. "Halsey, I've never told this even to Gertrude, but the morning after the crime I found in a tulip bed a revolver. It was yours, Halsey." For an appreciable moment Halsey stared at me. Then he turned to Gertrude. "My revolver, Trude?" he exclaimed. "Why, Jack took my revolver with him, didn't he?" "Oh, for heaven's sake, don't say that," I implored. "The detective thinks possibly Jack Bailey came back, and the thing happened then." "He didn't come back," Halsey said sternly. "Gertrude, when you brought down the revolver that night for Jack to take with him, what one did you bring? Mine?" Gertrude was defiant now. "No! Yours was loaded, and I was afraid of what Jack might do. I gave him one I have had for a year or two. It was empty." Halsey threw up both hands despairingly. "If that isn't like a girl," he said. "Why didn't you do what I asked you to, Gertrude? You send Bailey off with an empty gun and throw mine in the tulip bed, of all places on earth. Mine was a .38 caliber. Inquest will show, of course, that the bullet that killed Armstrong was a .38. Then where shall I be?" "You forget," I broke in, "that I have the revolver, and that no one knows about it." But Gertrude had risen angrily. "I cannot stand it. It's always with me," she cried. "Halsey, I did not throw your revolver into the tulip bed. I think you did yourself." They stared at each other across the big library table, with young eyes all at once hard and suspicious, and then Gertrude held out both hands to him appealingly. "We must not," she said brokenly. "Just now, with so much at stake, it's shameful. I know you are as ignorant as I am. Make me believe it, Halsey." Halsey soothed her as best he could, and then the breach seemed healed. But long after I went to bed, he sat downstairs in the living room alone, and I knew he was going over the case as he had learned it. Some things were clear to him that were dark to me. He knew, and Gertrude too, why Jack Bailey and he had gone away that night as they did. He knew where they had been for the last 48 hours, and why Jack Bailey had not returned with them. It seemed to me that without fuller confidence from both the children, there'd always be children to me, I should never be able to learn anything. As I was finally getting ready for bed, Halsey came upstairs and knocked at my door. When I got into a negligee, I used to say wrapper before Gertrude came back from school, I let him in. He stood in the doorway a moment, and then he went into agonies of silent mirth. I sat down on the side of the bed and waited in severe silence for him to stop, but he only seemed to grow worse. When he had recovered, he took me by the elbow and pulled me in front of the mirror. "How to be Beautiful," he quoted. "Advice to Maids and Matrons by Beatrice Fairfax." And then I saw myself. I'd neglected to move my wrinkle eradicator, and I presume my appearance was odd. I believe that it is a woman's duty to care for her looks, but it's much like telling a necessary falsehood. One must not be found out. By the time I got them off, Halsey was serious again, and I listened to his story. "Aunt Ray," he began, extinguishing his cigarette on the back of my ivory hairbrush, "I would give a lot to tell you the whole thing, but I can't for a day or so anyhow. But one thing I might have told you a long time ago. If you had known it, You wouldn't have suspected me for a moment of having anything to do with the attack on Arnold Armstrong. Goodness knows what I might do to a fellow like that if there was enough provocation and I had a gun in my hand under ordinary circumstances. But, well, I care a great deal about Louise Armstrong, Aunt Ray. I hope to marry her some day. Is it likely I would kill her brother? Her step-brother, I corrected. No, of course it isn't likely or possible. Why didn't you tell me, Halsey? Well, there were 2 reasons, he said slowly. One was that you had a girl already picked out for me. Nonsense, I broke in, and felt myself growing red. I had indeed one of the... Oh, well, but no matter. And the second reason, he pursued, was that the Armstrongs would have none of me. I sat bolt upright at that and gasped. The Armstrongs, I repeated, with old Peter Armstrong driving a stage across the mountains while your grandfather was war governor. Well, of course, the war governor's dead and out of the matrimonial market, Halsey interrupted, and the present Innes admits himself that he isn't good enough for Louise. Exactly, I said despairingly, and of course you're taken at your own valuation. The Inneses are not always so self-deprecatory. No, not always so, he said, looking at me with his boyish smile. Fortunately, Louise doesn't agree with her family. She's willing to take me, war governor or no, provided her mother consents. She isn't overly fond of her stepfather, but she adores her mother. And now can't you see where this thing puts me? Down and out with all of them. But the whole thing's absurd, I argued, and beside Gertrude's sworn statement that you left before Arnold Armstrong came would clear you at once. Halsey got up and began to pace the room. The air of cheerfulness dropped like a mask. She can't swear it, he said finally. Gertrude's story was true as far as it went, but she didn't tell everything. Arnold Armstrong came here at 2:30, came into the billiard room and left in 5 minutes. He came to bring something. Halsey, I cried, you must tell me the whole truth. Every time I see a way for you to escape, you block it yourself with this wall of mystery. What did he bring? A telegram for Bailey, he said. It came by special messenger from town and was most important. Bailey had started for here, and the messenger had gone back to the city. The steward gave it to Arnold, who'd been drinking all day and couldn't sleep, and was going for a stroll in the direction of Sunnyside. And he brought it? Yes. What was in the telegram? I can't tell you. As soon as things are made public. It's only a matter of days now. Gloomily. And Gertrude's story of a telephone message? Oh, poor Trudy, half-whispered. Poor, loyal little girl. Aunt Ray, there was no such message. No doubt your detective already knows that and discredits all Gertrude told him. And when she went back, it was to get the telegram? Probably, Halsey said slowly. When you get to thinking about it, Aunt Ray, it looks bad for all 3 of us, doesn't it? And yet I will take my oath that none of us even inadvertently killed that poor devil. I looked at the closed door into Gertrude's dressing room and lowered my voice. The same horrible thought keeps recurring to me, I whispered. Halsey, Gertrude probably had your revolver. She must have examined it, anyhow, that night, after you and Jack had gone. What if that ruffian came back and she... I couldn't finish. Halsey stood looking at me with shut lips. She might have heard him fumbling at the door. She had no key, the police say, and thinking it was you or Jack, she admitted him. When she saw her mistake, she ran up the stairs a step or 2, and turning like an animal at bay, she fired. Halsey had his hand over my lips before I finished, and in that position we stared at each other, our stricken glances crossing. The revolver, my revolver, thrown into the tulip bed, he muttered to himself. Thrown perhaps from an upper window. You say it was buried deep. Her prostration of her sins. Aunt Ray, you don't think it was Gertrude who fell down the clothes chute? I could only nod my head. in a hopeless affirmative. End of chapter 9. Recording by Ian Skillen.